Dustin Paschal here with Simon Paschal Says. Today we're going to talk about severance agreements, kind of all things severance agreements, and I'll say all things. You can only get so much in a quick little burst, but want to give you some tips. And really at the end of the day, if you're going to do severance agreements, you really ought to have it drafted by an attorney because it is a contract at the end of the day, and it's something that you're asking an employee to release claims. You want to make sure you're doing it right so that you're actually protected. But that said, perhaps you have kind of a draft from an attorney and you want to make some adjustments. So we kind of want to just talk through some tips and some things to know when it comes to severance agreements. Obviously, whenever you let an employee go, whether you think there's fear of a claim or not, a severance agreement is a good thing to utilize because it then forecloses any risk because the employee would release their claims. And so you wouldn't have to worry about that. Something to keep in mind on that release is the release is not foolproof. And what I mean by that is you can have the employee release his or her claims, but at the end of the day, pursuant to the law, the employee must retain the right to file a claim with the relevant government agency with respect to the EEOC or the TWC. Now, the employee can't recover. You can put in the agreement that they can't recover any damages, but they have the right to make that claim. They also have the right to challenge a few other claims under the law. So you got to be careful to understand that the release is not a 100% wholesale release. Employee can't ever do anything to you. That's not the case. They certainly could come back. A couple of other things that you want to keep in mind: make sure that you're approaching the venue provisions within the agreement the right way, and that any dispute over the agreement is going to be in the area where your company is, so that you're not going far away to fight about the agreement. And then a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to age. So for any employee under the age of 40, if you're giving that employee a release, you can kind of do what you want when it comes to giving that employee time to consider the agreement before signing. Not that I recommend it, but you obviously could say, here's the agreement, you need to sign it right now. There's nothing that prohibits that for an employee under the age of 40. Now, for any employees over the age of 40, the law is going to require some specific language be put in the agreement. So again, that's where I say you really should consult with your lawyer. But in addition to that, from a timing perspective, the law is going to require you to give the employee 21 days to consider the agreement before they have to return it to you. And then once the employee signs it, in the event that the employee does sign it, the law requires you to provide the employee 7 days within which that employee can revoke their signature and rescind the agreement. So something to keep in mind there in terms of requirements. And practically speaking, if you're going to issue payment pursuant to a settlement agreement, wait till that revocation period expires before you issue payment. Otherwise, you might pay, the employee then revokes the agreement, and now you're put in the position of having to go back and get the money from the employee, which may not be the easiest thing. And then one final thing to note about that timing for people over the age of 40, although it's that 21 7-day period, if you're letting more than one employee go around the same time, and at least one of them is over the age of 40, another subset of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act kicks in, the OWBPA, and that requires you to now give 45 days for the employee over the age of 40 to consider the agreement rather than 21. And then the 7-day revocation period is still there. And then there's some requirements about what you have to identify with respect to positions and ages of people that have been let go. So just keep in mind that while severance agreements are a great tool, they are still a contract, and there are some things that you need to know and make sure you have in there to really make them enforceable and useful as a tool. So you want to do your homework when it comes to severance agreements. So there's just a little bit of information there for you from Simon Paschal Says here in Simon Paschal Studios. I'm Dustin Paschal, and we'll see you next time.